The phone call came at 2 a.m., jolting Alan from a restless sleep. "Mr. Thompson, your father has been located, but he's unable to take responsibility. Arthur, your half-brother, has lost his mother to cancer and has nowhere else to go. Will you take him in?" The social worker's voice was clinical, but it carried the weight of a life-altering decision. Alan sat up in his bed, the Seattle rain pattering against the window of his modest apartment in Capitol Hill. At 32, he had built a life as a successful architect, but it was a life marked by solitude and the constant sting of discrimination. His family had cut him off years ago when he came out as gay. No, this half-brother he had only met a handful of times as a child was being thrust into his world. "Yes," Alan said without hesitation, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "Send him to me." 2 weeks later, Arthur arrived at Seattle-Tacoma Airport, a lanky 21-year-old with the same sharp jawline and dark eyes that marked him as family. He carried a duffel bag and the haunted look of someone who had lost too much too soon. "Hey, big brother," Arthur said, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks for doing this. I know it's a lot." Alan pulled him into a hug, feeling the tension in the younger man's shoulders. "Your family. That's what matters." As they drove through the rain-slicked streets, Alan explained the basics. The spare room was ready. He had enrolled Arthur in community college classes for the fall semester, and they would figure the rest out together. Inside, Alan wondered if he was making a mistake. His own life was far from stable. At work, promotions had passed him by after a client discovered he was gay and complained. Friends had drifted away when he refused to hide who he was. Bringing in Arthur meant opening his home to potential judgment. The first few days were awkward but filled with small acts of kindness. Alan cooked simple meals, showed Arthur around the neighborhood, and listened as the younger man talked about his mother, the endless hospital visits, and the father who had abandoned them both in different ways. Their father, Victor, had been a ghost in both their lives, charming when present, destructive when not. Alan had escaped at 18 after Victor's drunken rages and homophobic tirades. Arthur had endured longer. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching a documentary, Arthur turned to him. "I always wondered about you. Mom said you were the brave one who stood up to Dad." Alan chuckled bitterly. "Brave or stupid? It cost me everything, family. Some friends. People look at me differently now. Like I'm less than." Arthur's expression softened. "Not to me. You are the only one who stepped up." That night, Alan lay awake, the weight of responsibility settling in. He had always wanted a family, but this felt different. Arthur's presence filled the apartment with a warmth he hadn't known in years. Yet, as days turned into weeks, Alan noticed the way Arthur looked at him with trust, admiration, and something deeper that made Alan's heart race in ways it shouldn't. He pushed the thoughts away. This was his brother. Blood. The discrimination he faced was already enough without adding moral complications. At work, the whispers started when colleagues learned he had taken in his half-brother. "Is that wise? You being, you know." His boss pulled him aside. "Just keep it professional. Alan, we don't need any more complaints." The prejudice was subtle but constant, chipping away at his confidence. Arthur, meanwhile, started classes and found a part-time job at a cafe. He came home one day, bruised from an encounter with some guys who called him names after seeing him with Alan at a grocery store. "They think we're together," Arthur said, anger and confusion in his voice. Alan bandaged his brother's knuckles, their hands lingering a moment too long. "Ignore them. We know the truth." But did they? The line between brotherly love and something more was blurring in the quiet moments, shared laughs, late-night talks, the comfort of not being alone. As the weeks passed, Alan received a letter that made his blood run cold. It was from Victor. "Heard you're playing house with a boy and coming back. Family needs to be set right. The dark past was stirring, threatening the fragile sanctuary they had built. Alan stared at the paper, his mind racing. He had to protect Arthur, no matter what it cost him personally or professionally. But deep down, he feared the real danger was not the man who had once beaten him, but the feelings growing inside his own heart. Alan spent the next morning cleaning the apartment with extra care, as if tidying could somehow prepare for the storm he sensed coming. Arthur helped silently, their shoulders brushing occasionally, each touch sending a forbidden spark through Alan that he immediately regretted. When they sat down for lunch, Arthur finally spoke. "You don't have to do this alone. You know, whatever Dad wants, we face it together." Alan nodded, but inside he battled the urge to pull Arthur close, to confess the confusion tearing at him. The decision to take Arthur in had seemed so right, so moral. Now it felt like the beginning of a choice that could shatter them both. The custody hearing took place on a bright Tuesday morning in downtown Seattle. Sunlight pouring through the courthouse windows and casting long shadows across the polished floors. Alan sat beside his lawyer, Arthur on his other side, the young man's knee bouncing nervously under the table. The judge reviewed the papers, her face neutral but her eyes lingering on Alan a beat too long. "Mr. Thompson, you are openly gay, and you live alone with your half-brother. Some might question the suitability of this arrangement." Alan felt his cheeks burn, but he kept his voice calm. "Arthur is family, Your Honor. I am the only stable person he has left, and I will provide for him completely." Arthur squeezed his hand under the table, a silent show of support that sent warmth through Alan's chest despite the public scrutiny. Outside the courtroom, Alan's distant aunt and uncle waited, their faces twisted in disapproval. "You think you can raise a boy when you chose that lifestyle?" the aunt hissed, her voice loud enough for passers-by to hear. Arthur stepped forward, his voice steady. "He's not raising me like a child. I'm 21. He's giving me a home when no one else would." The relatives stormed off, but the damage was done. By evening, neighbors in their building had started whispering, and Arthur's phone buzzed with texts from old friends asking if the rumors were true. Alan watched his half-brother retreat to his room, shoulders slumped, and felt a wave of guilt. This was the price of his decision. The social cost he had known would come but hoped to shield Arthur from. That night, they ordered pizza and ate on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below in the clear evening air. Arthur picked at his slice, then looked up. "Why did you say yes to taking me in? You could have walked away like everyone else." Alan set his food down, the question hitting deep. "Because I know what it's like to be abandoned by him. I won't let that happen to you." Their eyes met, and for a moment the air between them thickened with unspoken words. Arthur reached out, his fingers brushing Alan's arm. "You're not like him. You're kind, brave." The touch lingered, and Alan pulled away gently, heart hammering. "We should get some sleep. Tomorrow will be better." But sleep didn't come easily. Alan lay in bed replaying the moment, questioning every impulse. Was this protectiveness or something darker? Something society would condemn even more than his sexuality alone? The moral line he had drawn for himself was blurring, and the internal battle raged. The following week brought more challenges. At Arthur's college, a professor pulled him aside after class, suggesting he might feel more comfortable in a different living situation. Rumors had spread fast, fueled by Alan's aunt posting on social media about the gay brother corrupting the family line. Arthur came home furious, slamming the door. "They look at me like I'm broken because of you." Alan stood in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, his knife pausing mid-cut. "Then maybe we need to move, or fight back." But Arthur shook his head. "No, I chose this. You chose this. We don't run." Their conversation turned to the past, Arthur sharing stories of their father's cruelty that Alan had never heard. The way Victor had belittled Arthur for being too soft, too much like his gay brother. The shared pain bonded them closer. Yet each story deepened Alan's resolve to be different, even as it stirred feelings he fought to bury. Marcus, no. There was no Marcus. Only the two of them against the world. Alan canceled a work meeting to attend Arthur's soccer game. Sitting in the stands under the bright afternoon sun, his parents around him shifted uncomfortably. One father muttered loud enough to hear. "That's the guy, right? The one raising his brother all wrong." Alan ignored it, cheering when Arthur scored, pride swelling in his chest. Afterward, Arthur hugged him on the field, the embrace lasting longer than brotherly, and Alan felt eyes on them. Back home, they talked late into the night about dreams, Arthur admitting he had always admired Alan's courage from afar. The admiration felt like a spark, and Alan changed the subject quickly, deciding in that moment to keep distance, to protect them both from the temptation and the judgment it would bring. But distance only made the pull stronger. The decision to stay and fight for their family unit was costing Alan sleep, career opportunities, and peace of mind. Yet letting go seemed impossible. The first real crack appeared during a family dinner invitation that Alan never expected to accept. His cousin called, voice dripping with false sweetness, insisting they come to clear the air. Alan agreed for Arthur's sake, hoping to show unity. The suburban house outside Seattle glowed with warm lights as they arrived, but the welcome was ice cold. Relatives glared as Arthur helped set the table, and conversation turned pointed. "So, Alan, still no wife?" the uncle asked. Before pausing, Arthur stiffened beside him. "He doesn't need one. He's happy." The room erupted in murmurs, and someone whispered the word abomination. Alan stood, chair scraping. "We came to connect, not to be judged." Arthur followed him out, the drive home silent until Arthur spoke. "They hate you for who you are, and now they hate me for standing with you." Alan gripped the wheel tighter. "Then we build our own family." The decision to cut ties completely was painful but necessary. Another trade-off that left Alan wondering if protecting Arthur meant isolating him forever. Work grew worse. A major client pulled out after hearing rumors, citing company values. Alan sat in his boss's office under fluorescent lights, defending his life. "My personal choices don't affect my designs." The boss sighed. "Perception matters. Alan, take some time off." The financial strain hit immediately, forcing Alan to dip into savings meant for Arthur's tuition. At home, Arthur noticed the stress and cooked dinner one evening. The kitchen filled with the smell of pasta and the soft glow of sunset through the windows. "You're carrying too much," Arthur said, placing a plate in front of him. "Let me help more." Their conversation flowed to lighter topics, laughter easing the tension. But when Arthur leaned in to wipe sauce from Alan's cheek, the moment stretched. Eyes locking, Alan pulled back. "We can't." Arthur's face fell. "Why?" "Because you're my brother." The words felt hollow even as he said them, the moral dilemma gnawing deeper. The following days brought small joys that tested boundaries. They hiked a trail near the city on a sunny weekend. The forest path dappled with light. Arthur slipped on a root, and Alan caught him. Their bodies closed for a heartbeat too long. Later, sitting on a log overlooking the water, Arthur confessed, "I never felt this safe before. With you, I feel seen." Alan swallowed hard, the internal conflict raging. Seen as what? The answer hung unspoken. Back at the apartment, a letter arrived from Victor, demanding a meeting. The past was closing in, and Alan knew ignoring it would cost him everything. He decided to meet alone, sparing Arthur the pain. But the choice backfired when Arthur insisted on coming. Together they drove to a neutral cafe, sunlight streaming through the windows as Victor entered. Older, Harder. Ice cold. You stole my son. He snarled. And now you're turning him into this. Arthur stood firm. I'm not a child anymore. Alan's decision to face the man head-on was brave, but the confrontation left scars. Victor threatening to go public with old family secrets to ruin Alan's reputation further. The price was mounting, each choice pulling them closer yet forcing Alan to question if his love for Arthur could ever be pure. Victor didn't wait long to act. Within days, local news ran a story about the gay architect raising his half-brother in an unconventional home, complete with anonymous quotes calling it unnatural. Alan stared at the article on his laptop, the bright screen lighting his face in the living room. Arthur read over his shoulder, anger flashing. They don't know us. Alan closed the laptop. But they will judge anyway. The betrayal came from within when a former colleague leaked private emails to the press, twisting Alan's coming-out story into something sinister. The moral weight crushed Alan. Had his openness caused this? He considered hiding again, moving to a new city. But Arthur refused. We fight here. The decision to stay and endure was costly. Alan's freelance work drying up almost overnight. In the midst of the storm, quiet moments between them grew charged. One rainy afternoon, they reorganized the apartment, boxes of old photos spilling out. Arthur found one of them as kids, their father in the background scowling. Look how far we've come, he said softly, hand resting on Alan's. The touch ignited something, and for a split second their foreheads touched in comfort. Alan stepped away, heart pounding. We can't let this happen. It's wrong. Arthur looked hurt. Is it? Or is it just what people say is wrong? The internal struggle consumed Alan that night, pacing the floor while Arthur slept. Choosing to deny his feelings felt like self-betrayal. Yet pursuing them risked destroying the very family he had fought to build. The trade-off was tearing him apart. Social services knocked next. A surprise visit under bright daylight. The worker asked pointed questions about their relationship. The apartment spotless and sunlit. Everything seemed stable, she noted, but the community concerns. Arthur defended them passionately, his loyalty a balm and a burden. After she left, they sat on the balcony, the city bustling below. Alan confessed part of his turmoil. I took you in to give you safety, not to complicate your life. Arthur smiled sadly. You didn't complicate it. You gave it meaning. The conversation ended with a hug that lingered, both pulling away with reluctance. The dark past escalated when Victor called, demanding money from an old fraud scheme he claimed Alan knew about. Pay up, or I tell the world what kind of home this really is. Alan refused, choosing integrity over silence. But the decision invited more threats. Arthur overheard and vowed to stand with him, their bond strengthening even as society pushed harder. Each confrontation forced Alan to weigh love against duty, the price paid in sleepless nights and lost opportunities. The court date for full guardianship arrived under clear skies, the courtroom packed with curious onlookers and reporters. Alan and Arthur sat side by side, hands clasped discreetly for strength. The judge listened as Victor testified, painting Alan as unfit, using his sexuality as a weapon. Your own father disowned him for a reason. Arthur took the stand, voice clear. Alan saved me. He's the only one who ever did. The room murmured, but the judge ruled in their favor for now, citing stability. Outside, Victor cornered them in the hallway, sunlight streaming through windows. This isn't over. The betrayal deepened when Alan's aunt provided old letters to the press, accusing Alan of grooming. The public scandal exploded. Arthur's college suspending him pending review. Alan made the hard choice to pull savings for a lawyer, sacrificing his retirement fund. The cost was real. His career in ruins. At home, tension peaked. Arthur paced the sunlit living room. I won't let them take this from us. Alan watched him, the feelings he had fought now impossible to ignore. One evening after a long talk, they stood on the balcony again, the golden hour bathing them. Arthur stepped closer. "I think I'm falling for you, not as a brother." Alan froze, the confession mirroring his own heart. "We can't. It's not right." But the denial felt like a lie. The moral dilemma consumed him. Was blood a barrier or an excuse for fear? He chose distance that night, sleeping on the couch, the decision protecting them legally but wounding emotionally. Arthur respected it, but the air between them crackled. Victor struck again, showing up at their door with documents claiming fraud involvement. Alan refused to pay, choosing honesty even as it risked exposure. The confrontation spilled to the street, neighbors watching in bright daylight. Arthur stood by him, united. The incident made headlines. Job offers vanished. Alan reflected alone. The price of his choices clear: lost income, lost friends, but gained a bond deeper than he had imagined. The awakening began slowly, realizing hiding had never protected him. No, with Arthur, the fight felt worth every scar. Yet the internal war continued, each shared glance a battle. Public pressure mounted as protests formed outside their building, signs decrying the arrangement in the afternoon sun. Alan and Arthur watched from the window, the scene a stark reminder of societal hate. "We have to leave for a bit," Alan said, deciding on a short trip to the coast to regroup. On the drive, with the ocean sparkling beside them, they talked openly for the first time. Arthur admitted his feelings had grown from gratitude to love. Alan confessed the same, the admission both liberating and terrifying. They stopped at a scenic overlook, the wind whipping around them in full light. A brief hug turned into a forehead touch, the romantic pull undeniable yet restrained. Back in Seattle, the decision to return stronger united them. But Victor had filed new papers, alleging abuse of power. A close friend betrayed them by selling a story to tabloids, claiming Alan had influenced Arthur unnaturally. The scandal cost Alan his last client, forcing him to sell his car for bills. The trade-off was devastating, but Arthur got a job to help, showing maturity that made Alan proud. Nights were filled with strategy sessions, their hands brushing over documents, each moment testing resolve. Alan chose transparency, speaking to a reporter about their truth without details of feelings. The interview airing under studio lights. Support trickled in from the LGBT community, but family doubled down. The internal conflict peaked when Alan considered ending the living arrangement to save Arthur's future. Arthur refused. "We choose us." The choice cemented their path, the price paid in isolation and financial hardship. Victor appeared at Arthur's workplace, causing a scene in the sunny plaza. Arthur defended their home fiercely, the event recorded and shared online. Alan rushed there, the two standing together against the man who had caused so much pain. The confrontation revealed Victor's fraud, but he escaped legal immediate consequences. Alan's decision to report him was right, yet it invited retaliation. The brothers returned home exhausted, sharing a quiet meal where the unspoken love hung heavy. The moral question loomed larger. Could they deny what felt true for the sake of convention? Each day the answer shifted. The awakening that love demanded courage no matter the cost. The climax built during a community meeting called to address neighborhood concerns. The hall bright with overhead lights. Alan and Arthur attended, facing a crowd of angry faces. Victor stormed in, accusing them publicly of moral corruption. The room erupted, but Arthur spoke first, his voice ringing. "Love isn't corruption." Alan followed, detailing the discrimination they endured. The crowd quieted somewhat, but Victor lunged verbally, revealing he had faked his absence to evade debts. Security removed him, but the damage was done. Outside in the parking lot under streetlights, Victor threatened one last time. Alan chose to record the encounter, turning the tables. The decision shifted power, but the emotional toll was immense. Home that night, the tension broke. On the balcony under moonlight mixed with city glow, Arthur confessed fully. I love you, Alan. Beyond blood. Alan, tears in his eyes, admitted the same. They shared a gentle kiss, the first and only, filled with years of unspoken emotion. The act brought peace, but also fear of consequences. The next day, media twisted the story further, but Alan decided to fight back with a public statement affirming their bond without details. The choice cost him remaining professional ties. Yet supporters rallied. Arthur faced his own dilemma at school, choosing to transfer rather than hide. Victor's final betrayal came in a lawsuit for custody reversal, but evidence of his crimes surfaced. Thanks to Alan's report, the court dismissed it in a sunlit session. The victory was bittersweet, the brothers paying with lost connections and public stares. Alan reflected on every decision, the trade-offs that had tested his soul. The awakening was complete. True family defied labels. Even if the world disagreed, life settled into a fragile new normal. The apartment filled with cautious hope under bright morning light. Alan found freelance work through allies in the community, while Arthur excelled in new classes. Their love remained private, expressed in quiet support and shared glances. The moral choice to honor it without public declaration, a hard-won balance. Family attempts at reconciliation failed, the aunt calling one last time to condemn them. Alan hung up, the rejection stinging but no longer defining him. Arthur held him after, the embrace a reminder of what they had built. One sunny afternoon at the cliff overlooking the ocean, they stood hand in hand, the wind fresh. We paid a high price, Alan said, but I'd choose you again. Arthur nodded. Me too. The dark past was behind them. Victor facing charges. The threats silenced. Yet scars remained. Friends lost. Opportunities gone. The journey had forced Alan to confront his deepest fears. Arthur to find his voice. Their story was one of resilience, where love triumphed over prejudice and taboo through sheer will. As they watched the waves crash below, Alan turned to Arthur. We made it. But at what cost? The question lingered. A final reflection on every decision, every sacrifice. True or false? Should blood relations always prevent two consenting adults from pursuing a deep romantic connection, no matter the personal cost and societal hate?